is no exaggeration to say that Northlane's 2019 released album Alien was one of the most influential metalcore records of the last couple of years. It was critically acclaimed for its various influences, was voted Album of the Year by the metalcore community on Reddit, and definitely secured a place as one of my favorite metalcore albums of all time. Now, 3 years after the release of Alien, Northlane finally released its successor album Obsidian, and with it came huge expectations. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into the review and talk about whether these expectations were met or not. The very first thing that I personally want to talk about is the album's general sound, because what immediately stood out to me on my initial playthroughs was just how focused the album and the sound of the album especially sound. While Alien was a wild mix of a variety of influences, among them like new metal, techno, acid, drum and bass, psy, big room, and just many more, Obsidian feels a lot more coherent and flowing and consistent in its influences. The general amount of different influences has been cut back and is now restricted to mostly techno, new metal, and some basic synth. But the influences themselves are even more predominant. Especially the techno influences are all over the record, and they range from pretty simple synth and bass lines to just full-on techno and dark techno parts. You can really hear that over the last couple of years, John has grown a huge interest in the electronic dance music scene, and not just a superficial one. Because the stuff that he took inspiration from goes way beyond your usual stock standard drumcode techno. As someone who spent a lot of his youth in like dark underground techno clubs, I especially appreciate the dark techno elements that can be found all over the record, for example in the song Abomination. The instrumentals in general are much more essential this time around. While Alien focused a lot more on Marcus' vocals, the instrumentals on Obsidian feel like they have their own story to tell. Stories that come in a wide variety of emotions this time around. Some are quite uplifting, like Zen and Nova for example, while others, like Cypher and Abomination for example, feel really dark and even kind of uneasy. There's even room for some just like straight up goofiness in the form of Echo Chamber. And this diversity really fits the diversity of themes on the record. After the highly personal and even kind of self-therapeutic lyrics that Marcus wrote for Alien, we now get a bit more diversity in the themes for the songs. Instead of childhood trauma and drug addiction, we now have songs about social media, songs about having nothing to write a song about, and songs about Matrix. Yes, I'm being serious. After the various Northlane Matrix core memes, we now have an actual Northlane song about the Matrix. There's really only one personal song like the ones on Alien on this record, and that one is about Marcus' family approaching him and telling him not to write lyrics like the ones on Alien anymore. The irony of that is quite astonishing. I personally have to say that I much preferred the darker and more personal lyrics on Alien, especially because in parts Obsidian feels so much more dark and cathartic that I can't help feeling that some of these songs would have been a better fundament for Alien-style lyrics than songs on Alien themselves. That being said, the lyrics on the record are still pretty good and work well enough that I can confidently say that my complaints are just totally useless nitpicking. There's really only 2 points of actual criticism that I have, and one of them are the riffs. I know that we're basically in a whole new era of Northlane and that the days of singularity are long gone, but it does bug me quite a bit that there's pretty much nothing left of the progressive elements that this band was once so famous for. With the exception of the song Plenty, all of the riffs on the record pretty much just consist of chugging and some more chugging. I'll admit that it's groovy and leaves room for the synth, but it still kind of bothers me because for so many years the riffs were what made Northlane Northlane, and I just know that there's so much talent going to waste with these riffs. The other criticism I have is about the choruses. There's really not much I can say here other than they just don't do it for me. I can't really say what it is exactly, but it's hard for me to believe that this is the band that wrote the amazing choruses of songs like 4D, Quantum Flux, Citizen, etc. This isn't really the end of the world since Northlane isn't really a band that you listen to for the choruses anyway, but I just wanted to have it mentioned in here. All in all, I can easily say that even though it didn't quite reach the heights of Alien, Obsidian is one great record and I will be listening to this one for months to come. If I had to give it a score, I'd probably give it like an 8 or 8.5 out of 10. But scores don't really work for me, they always change in my head, so take this with a grain of salt.